Welcome back to Believe in Jets, a New York Jets podcast on the Believe Podcast Network. My name is Rami Lavi. We had some news from over the weekend. Mike Vrabel officially going to the New England Patriots. I was producing on WFAN when this happened, when the news broke, and I don't think anyone's shocked by this. It is still kind of BS. I will never root as hard for anyone the way I'm going to root against Mike Vrabel. It is crazy how much I am going to hate him now. I don't think he used the Jets. Let's be honest. In a way, maybe he did. Obviously, I think interviewing with the Jets was obviously helpful to him in getting an interview with the Patriots and getting them to be like, no, 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 we don't want him there. We're going to fire our current head coach and we're going to hire Vrabel. But the way a year ago they talked about this is the successor, Gerard Mayo, we've been grooming him to be the successor to Bill Belichick. It was all BS. It was all smoke screens. It was all lies. And the way they manipulated the Rooney Rule by just immediately interviewing two guys who they were never going to give the job to, two guys who were just available, right? Two guys who weren't currently employed by other teams. They just found two black guys that were available off the street and said, "Hey, let's interview them so that we could get that out of the way and then go hire Mike Vrabel." The Jets still had a chance. I don't take back what I said on Friday's episode, and I talked with Connor Hughes about this. The Jets had a legitimate chance. If they somehow blew him away with the contract and the Patriots weren't willing to match, because that was the latest on Saturday, was that the Patriots didn't want to give the amount of money that Vrabel wanted. Still, the Jets could have gotten him, but it would have been a tough road. This was predetermined. He was always going to go back to New England. New England was always going to go back and hire him, which tells you that this whole thing was a sham. And that's frustrating. And I will root against that because, like I said on Friday, Tom Brady was a winner. New England wasn't a winner. Robert Kraft wasn't a winner. Bill Belichick proved to not even be a winner. Brady was a winner. So everyone in Brady's orbit who won around him, you can think Tom Brady. And my friend who says, who's a big Titans fan, says that Vrabel's the worst coach. I hope he's right. I don't think he's right, but I hope he's right. I hope it goes terrible. And remember what I told you. This idea that Drake May is such a, oh, he's a franchise quarterback. They have all this cap space and a franchise quarterback. I'm not buying it. I don't think Drake May is automatically a franchise quarterback. I think there's a very good likelihood that Drake May is not a franchise quarterback. One way or another, we're going to find out. And I can't wait to find out. I want to see what happens with Drake May. I want to see what happens with New England. I want to see what happens with Mike Vrabel, and I would be rooting like hell that they fail. Not just because it's the Patriots, just because the way everything went down, and the Patriots makes it worse. But the way everything went down, it just rubs me the wrong way, and I will be rooting as hell, rooting like hell against Mike Vrabel and the Patriots. Speaking of head coaching news, one of my tweets kind of went viral. A lot of people saw it. I guess 300,000 people. I don't know what qualifies as viral, but I saw they made quote cards out of it, and I saw that KFC Barstool used it in one of his videos. So I guess, people saw the tweet. I didn't do anything. I just tweeted it out. I was producing the show on WFAN, Moose's football show on every Sunday morning. He does on WFAN, Mark Malusis. And he had Connor Hughes on to talk about the Jets and the Giants. And Connor said Rex Ryan to the Jets is not happening. What he's hearing is he's definitely out. That is not happening. He's not coming to the Jets. So Rex can keep talking about it. And he did later when they announced like an hour later that Vrabel was going to New England. He's like, I hope I beat his ass twice a year. Ha 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 on the ESPN desk. And it's the right move. As much as Rex gives you this energy and this vibe and something that, I don't know, something intangible that you can talk about. This is a guy who hasn't coached in the league in 8 years. The last time he coached, he wasn't successful. Last time he coached with the Jets, he wasn't successful. The way it ended in New York was not good. And nobody else is trying to hire him. You don't go hire someone that there are zero other suitors for. If Rex Ryan was a legitimate candidate, don't you think at least one other team would be trying to interview him? The last interviews he got were defensive coordinator positions years ago. And he didn't get those either. You think that's a coincidence? Nobody's trying to hire Rex Ryan, so why should the Jets be the one team that's going to hire him? It makes no sense to me. But there is a coach who is now available, and this happened this morning, Monday morning. It was announced that Mike McCarthy is out in Dallas. And this was something people started to talk about towards the end of the year. The conversation early in the season was, oh, they're going to fire McCarthy. They're going to fire McCarthy. And it's like, actually, they kind of want him back. And they even denied the Bears the opportunity to interview him. And then they went to contract negotiations, and McCarthy decided, no, how about this? I don't want to come back to you. I don't want to be seen as that guy who has to prove it every day for Jerry Jones. I don't want to be that guy who's constantly looking over my shoulder at what this crazy owner is doing. And so maybe he'll never come to the Jets. The Jets should try and blow him away. He's dealt with a crazy owner in Jerry Jones, who's also the GM. Tell him you can pick the GM, you can work in union with the GM. This is the next candidate that the Jets have to hire. There's nobody else. You want experience, you want winning. This guy is stability, he's winning, he's culture, he's everything you want in a head coach is Mike McCarthy. People talk about his clock management. People can talk about how he loses playoff games, the dumb face he makes on the sideline. Mike McCarthy is every bit as good as Mike Tomlin. He's every bit as good as Sean Payton. All these guys that I talked about on Friday that might even be better than Belichick because they've done it with different guys. The only guy who's consistently won is now Andy Reid and formerly Bill Belichick. That's it. It's hard to win Super Bowls. But guys are in the playoffs every single year, no matter their team. The team didn't quit on him this year. The way the Dallas team rallied around him and actually finished the year strong. Mike McCarthy is the only answer for the Jets right now. You're going to go back to Aaron Glenn or one of these first-time guys? No. Give me Mike McCarthy, a proven winner, a guy who proves stability, a guy who's done it year in and year out. You want consistency? You want to change the face of the franchise? Bring in Mike McCarthy. It starts with him. He is the hire the Jets have to go after in this offseason. And that means whether him and Aaron repair their relationship and you want to continue 1 year with Rodgers and that's the bridge to the next quarterback, great. Without Rodgers, whether it's a new quarterback coming in, whoever it is, this is the beginning of the rebuild, that's fine too. Mike McCarthy should be the New York Jets head coach. And by the way, I watched the wild card games this weekend, and when I'm watching the wild card games as a New York sports fan, I'm obviously thinking about it from a New York perspective. As somebody who works in New York sports media, works at WFAN, that's how I think about things. I think about things as I watch football playoffs. I'd love to have our teams in one of those one time, right? But until then, I'm thinking about it from a New York perspective. And I'm watching these games, and everything that kept coming back to me. I'm watching the Chargers. I'm watching Tampa. I'm watching Denver. I'm watching Pittsburgh. I'm watching Green Bay. And even their fans are tweeting it now when it comes to Green Bay. Every single one of these teams would have been better over this weekend if Aaron Rodgers was quarterbacking these teams. That is just a fact. You don't think the Chargers would be better if Aaron Rodgers? Houston was dying to give that game away. Houston was trying at every turn to hand that game to the Chargers, and the Chargers just couldn't take it because their quarterback melted. Their quarterback threw 4 interceptions, more than he's thrown all year. Their quarterback was awful. The Chargers probably win that game. That game's not close. If they don't keep letting Houston back into that game, finally Houston was like, fine, I guess we'll take it. Okay, whatever. But it took 3 quarters for Houston to take advantage of all the mistakes that the Chargers were making. I would bet that the Chargers win that game easily if Aaron Rodgers is quarterback for the Chargers. Tampa Bay last night, how many mistakes they made, how many mistakes there were, that their defensive penalties were crazy. Washington's defense couldn't stop anyone. It was Tampa shooting themselves in the foot on the offensive side that changed this game. You don't think Rodgers puts up more than 20 points against Washington's defense yesterday? How about Denver? Of course, they missed the field goal at the half, and of course, everything flipped at that point. But Buffalo also just let them hang around. The first half should have been 10-10 going into the halftime. You don't think Denver would have been better yesterday if Aaron Rodgers was quarterback for that team? Pittsburgh, for sure. Second half also, Baltimore just, all right, hands off the wheel. We're good. We're up 21-0. And how many 3-and-outs did Pittsburgh have? How awful did their offense look? Can't convince me it wouldn't have been better with Aaron Rodgers. And the Green Bay fans, and this is a funny one to me. Obviously, I don't think that Love is fully healthy. They have so many injuries on both sides. The fact that that game was close is crazy to me. Real indictment on Philly, if anything. But you don't think they would have been better? We hear the fans clamoring. All the pictures I saw on social media yesterday are Green Bay Packer fans tweeting pictures of Rodgers in a Packer jersey. They're done with Jordan Love. After one bad playoff game, they're done with Jordan Love and ready for Rodgers to come back. This guy was anointed last season. This guy was supposed to be the best quarterback in the NFC after last season. He got the huge contract. It's crazy. Somebody texted me yesterday, and this is interesting. A friend of mine texted me last night. Is Jaden Daniels now the best quarterback in the NFC? And it's not that crazy to think. Now, I think the obvious answer is Matthew Stafford. We'll see how he plays tonight against Minnesota. But I think Matthew Stafford is by far the best quarterback in the NFC. But that's an indictment on the NFC quarterbacks. Who's good in the NFC? Like, 2 years ago hurts, right? Oh, they went to the Super Bowl. It's obviously hurts. Then last year was a lot of people were saying Love, right? Jordan Love's the best quarterback. Is it Dak Prescott? Like, who is the best quarterback in the NFC? It's not Jared Goff, I don't think. It's weird. So any of these NFC teams, if they got Aaron Rodgers, would be better, you think, right? I certainly think so. And so that brings me to my point. And before that, by the way, I talked about Houston trying to give away the game. Also, Houston, though, and Washington proved, and this is now 2 years in a row that we've seen this, it does not take a long time to have a rebuild in the NFL. It takes 1 year to turn your entire franchise around. The Washington roster was decimated last year. There was no one good on the roster. They had the second overall pick in the draft. The offensive line wasn't good. The weapons were. No one was good on that team. They were a terrible team. One quarterback changes everything. You hear that, Giant fans who are like, "Oh, it's okay that it doesn't matter that we didn't tank. We did. It's not about the first overall pick. We don't need the quarterback. We need to build an offensive line and get weapons for him and then get the quarterback." No, the quarterback fixes everything. When you get the guy, it changes everything. It doesn't take long to have a rebuild in the NFL. You get the right coach, you get the right quarterback. We've seen it now 2 years in a row with Houston. Houston did this last year. They should have been the number one overall pick in the draft. And who knows what happens if they end up getting Bryce Young instead of CJ Stroud. If they're the same they are now, who cares? Not the point. That's a sidetrack. They're probably not as good as they are right now if they do end up getting the number one overall pick. But the point is, they were this close to getting the number one overall pick if they didn't have a head coach in Lovie Smith who knew he was out the door, who purposely got the team to rally around him and win a game because he knew he was fired anyway. If that doesn't happen, they get the number one overall pick. That's how bad their team was. They had a terrible roster. And what do? They go out, they get CJ Stroud, they get DeMeco Ryans. Like that, immediately, in 1 year, it turns around. Now, back-to-back years, they've hosted and won playoff games. In back-to-back years, they've won playoff games at home after being the worst team, or if not the second to worst team in football the prior season. Same thing with Washington. They were the worst team or second to worst team in football last season. And they come back this year, and a lot can argue that their roster was a lot worse than Chicago's roster. But when you get the quarterback right, you get the coach right, you change the culture, changes everything. Speaking of the culture, I mean, the owner greeting everyone in the locker room. You saw Magic and Josh Harris greeting everyone in the locker room, how much they love the owner. I can't imagine that happening with Woody, all right? I can't imagine the Jets players all jumping up and down, greeting Woody after a huge playoff win in the locker room. Just sell the team, Woody, please. God damn it. But, man, it does not take long for a rebuild. So all the Jets fans who are saying, "Oh, get rid of Rodgers, start the rebuild now," people who are saying that are dumb. The rebuild can take 1 year. So you're not delaying the rebuild by taking a chance to make the playoffs with Aaron Rodgers one more year. The Jets roster is not as desolate as some of those rosters. They have young talent. This is not going to be a long rebuild process if you get the right coach and the right quarterback, which is why all these reasons are 100%. 100%. I am certain for all these reasons that Aaron Rodgers has to be the Jets quarterback in 2025. There is no other choice. Aaron Rodgers should be the Jets quarterback in 2025 for all of those reasons. We saw the teams that would have loved to have Aaron Rodgers yesterday. A whole bunch of them. Anyone in the NFC outside of maybe LA would rather have Aaron Rodgers than their current quarterback. Even Minnesota, we'll see with Sam Darnold tonight. Who knows what he looks like after how he shit the bed last week. I would take Aaron Rodgers over Sam Darnold in Minnesota with all those weapons, that offensive line, that offensive creation, how they do things out there. You don't think Aaron Rodgers would be incredible in that offense? Aaron Rodgers, a year removed from the injury. Aaron Rodgers, if he wants to come back hungrier than ever, a full year off. Now, this is going to be his first offseason. Last offseason, he was recovering the whole offseason. He was doing rehab. He's finally going to have a year to let his body recover, calm down, come back into preseason healthy and rested. You're going to tell me Rodgers is not the best option for the Jets in 2025? Think about how many teams yesterday would have wanted Aaron Rodgers playing quarterback for them, or on Saturday if you talk about the Steelers or the Chargers. Look at the two teams that their turnaround happened in 1 year. They're all of a sudden they rebuilt, right? You talk about Washington needs a rebuild. Houston needs a rebuild. They rebuilt in 1 year. Aaron Rodgers could be that guy who is the rebuild for the franchise. And then you let the quarterback come in under him, whoever that is. So there's no, "Oh, we need to get to the rebuild now. We can't delay the rebuild any longer." There's no delaying the rebuild. You bring in the right coach. The roster's already pretty good. Rebuilds happen really quick. Turnarounds happen really quick in the NFL. What is your better choice than to bring back Aaron Rodgers in 2025? I don't see a better choice. And if he doesn't come to the Jets, there's a number of other teams who would line up to take him, and I'd be rooting for him. I've always rooted for Rodgers. I won't stop now. Sure, I want him to be successful with the Jets next year, but wherever he goes, I hope he's successful. The Jets have to bring back Aaron Rodgers in 2025. All those reasons prove it. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back right after this. All right, my last and final takeaway from the wild card games, watching so far, and I know we haven't seen the Lions play yet, we haven't seen the Rams play yet, we haven't seen the Vikings play yet. So those are three teams, and there's a fourth team we haven't seen play yet, and I'll get to it. But my biggest takeaway from all this, Philly, man, they didn't really impress me, and maybe there's injuries and lingering stuff, but there still seems to be a rift there with A.J. Brown. He's reading a book on the sideline. Who knows what's going on there? Not that impressed. Buffalo in the first half was daring, like I said, daring Denver to take this game. Baltimore, this incredible team, they took their foot off the gas in the second half. That game got dicey. I was scared about my 7.5 bet. I had, or 8.5. Well, I had two bets. I had my Baltimore minus 8.5, and I also had the minus 10 with the under 44.5. Both of them hit, which is fine. Great. But I was kind of getting nervous a little bit about Baltimore late in that game. Right? They kind of let the teams hang around there. Those are supposed to be the big teams, right? I guess the Lions still. But isn't all this telling you that Kansas City is just going to win the Super Bowl again? Isn't that where everything's pointing? That Kansas City's just going to do it again? Patrick Mahomes is so much better than any of these other quarterbacks. Am I wrong? It's Patrick Mahomes, it's Andy Reid, it's the Chiefs. Their offense started getting better as the year went on. And nothing from this first week. Even the teams that won, they didn't impress me. You like Jaden Daniels and a rookie quarterback, head coach who's blown Super Bowls in the past? You like them over the Chiefs? Do you like Philly and what we saw from them over the Chiefs? Buffalo didn't look great. Baltimore, second half, not great. I don't know. To me, all signs still point that Kansas City should be the champions and we're headed for a three-peat. So you could have Lamar and Josh Allen. They're the MVPs. They're fighting against each other. This is going to be a crazy game next weekend. Oh, Jaden Daniels going to the best team, going up north to Detroit, and they're going to the best team in the league. The rookie quarterback going to the best team in the league. That's going to be an incredible game. You have LA and Minnesota's huge record, even though they're a wild card, and LA with Matthew Stafford. All these little storylines. Oh, Philly, how good they've been all year, and the tush push and Saquon. All right. It feels like Kansas City is the least talked about great team. No one's talking about the Chiefs. Not all year. And they dominated all freaking year. And they're just going to get back to the Super Bowl and they're going to win it all. Tell me I'm wrong. You can't. And speaking of Kansas City, Diana Rossini said something really interesting, and I'll close with this. Diana Rossini said something really interesting on the Pardon My Take Barstool podcast. She was talking about how it's like this new trend to have head coach announcements where it's like, oh, the head coach, our head coach and our GM are staying in their positions. We're not making a change this year. Like, if you have to announce that your head coach and GM are coming back, you're probably not very confident in your head coach and GM, right? Like, if you have to make that announcement, then you probably don't feel too good about your head coach and GM. Like, John Mara looked like he was reading a hostage letter when he was talking about bringing back Dable and Shane. Like, he looked disgusted by his own decision. He looked like he definitely didn't want to be doing that. Like, yes, unfortunately, I have no choice but to bring back Brian Dable and Joe Shane because if I don't, someone is going to kill my daughter. Like, crazy stuff. That's what it looked like. And sorry to be graphic, or I don't know if that's, insensitive. I'm sorry. But the point is, John Mara did not want to be there reading that letter or making that statement or anything of that sort. And all of a sudden, it's supposed to be like this, yeah, well, of course they're coming back. No, do you think they come back? How does that work, doing your job? Like the way Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas were doing their job this year, it was impossible. They're constantly looking over the shoulder. Like, I guess we're going to get fired now. You take away Rex Hogan. You tell Joe Douglas he's not allowed to make certain decisions. Turns out with Robert Saleh, the first misstep, he was going to get fired. Which means you should have fired him last year and brought in Vrabel last year, which is crazy that they didn't do that now, especially now that he's in New England. And now we've come full circle. You think Dable and Shane are going to be just going ho-hum doing their job? And how does that work? Like, they're probably not going to get Sanders or Ward in the first two picks in the draft. They have the third pick. So how are they all of a sudden going to be better next year? How are they going to show signs of improvement? Even if they do get a rookie quarterback, Rookie quarterbacks take a while to develop sometimes. Do you think year one all of a sudden it's going to look good, especially in the first 4 or 5 games? And then what? Mara's just going to fire them then? Then what's the point of holding on to them? Like, to me, Dable and Shane need to be here for at least 2 or 3 more years. And now you can make the argument for me, you can make the argument more for Dable that he should be back than Shane. The reason I say that is because Shane's rosters haven't been particularly good. Dable's done, I think, the most that he could. He's proven he won games with Drew Lock, with Tommy DeVito. He's won games with quarterbacks who are not great. He won a playoff game with freaking Daniel Jones. And we know what Daniel Jones is and what he isn't. So to me, you want to let Brian Dable stay here and develop a quarterback a little bit longer. Whereas Joe Shane, do I trust him to put a competent roster around that quarterback, whoever that quarterback is? But now it's a huge question. Who is that quarterback going to be for the Giants? I don't know, right? There are not very many good options for who the next Giants quarterback is, unless they trade for Justin Fields. Or I think he's a free agent. You could sign Justin Fields. That's the one that makes most sense to me. He's not going to cost you a ton. You're not drafting the quarterback. If you suck another year, it's okay. It's a no-risk move. Okay, we'll draft the quarterback next year. You're not drafting a quarterback at 3, unless Shador or Cam somehow magically drops them. And obviously, Deion Sanders said, there are certain teams we're not going to go to. We'll see how that works out. Can the Giants pull it off again, pull off the Eli Manning and Phillip Rivers swap where they somehow get Shador Sanders? There's not another. That year worked out because there was another quarterback in Phillip Rivers that San Diego was okay with taking. And by the way, don't tell Giants fans this. Phillip Rivers is a better quarterback than Eli Manning. He is. Phillip Rivers is better than Eli Manning. He doesn't have the winning record. He doesn't have the Super Bowls. If you put Phillip Rivers on those Giants teams, on those Giants rosters, they make the playoffs more. They maybe win the Super Bowls. I don't know. You can't say that they for sure win those Super Bowls. But they're a better franchise for longer than Eli Manning, and his struggles early, his struggles late. In between, didn't win a lot of playoff games. He had 2 great runs. He had 2 Joe Flacco runs. So Eli Manning is basically Joe Flacco minus the success and with one more Flacco run. That's it. He had 2 magical runs where the defense was incredible. Like, you held the Patriots to 30 total points in 2 games. And you're going to tell me that it was all Eli Manning? It's crazy. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, which is insane to me. Like, Hall of Famer, maybe. I get it. 2 Super Bowls. Good. I would dream of that as a Jet fan. But my God, whatever. I was not planning on getting into a whole Eli Manning debate here. Just happened. Bring in Justin Fields. He's still young enough. He has the body type similar to a Josh Allen, where we know Dable worked with him, had success with him. He could run the ball. You could be successful. Obviously, Daniel Jones, that 1 year he was successful at Dable, he ran the ball a lot. He had a running quarterback. There's still so much skill there, and he's still young. Now, I know we don't see it often where quarterbacks on their 3rd or 4th or 5th different head coach, GM, play caller, where it actually starts to work. You tell me that Justin Fields couldn't be better than what Russell Wilson gave the Steelers the last month and a half? I think Fields would have been better than that. I mean, tell me I'm wrong. I think in a new spot, change of scenery, he sat behind Russell Wilson for a little bit, got a little breather, got to take a deep breath and calm down and watch what's going on around him. I think Dable can breathe life into Justin Fields. I don't see a better option for them unless, like I said, and this is how I got into the Eli Manning thing, Shador Sanders does decide to jump up in the draft and say, hey, I'm not going to anyone but the Giants. I don't know if that can happen this year. I don't see it happening. You're not getting the top 2 quarterbacks, especially with now Deshaun Watson's going to be out another year, and they restructured his contract. They're definitely taking Cam Ward, in my opinion. Shador Sanders, he's going to be going to either Tennessee, or if Cleveland takes, whatever, vice versa, the other way around, whatever it is. I don't think they're getting one of those 2 quarterbacks, which tells you who's the other option. We saw Drew Aller and how bad he was at Penn State in the last game. He's not coming out of the draft, or he's not coming out of college to go to the draft. To me, the only answer is to go with one of those veteran guys. And who's the guy that I think is still young enough, still has a lot to prove, and still can be successful in the league? To me, that guy is Justin Fields for the New York Giants. And I know this isn't a Giants podcast, but I figured I'd talk about it because I was talking about GMs and head coaches and all that stuff. So that'll do it for the episode. I do have one more interesting trade idea regarding Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. So we'll do that a little bit later in the week. That's a radio tease, but for next episode. So take that with you and be like, I'm thinking about this. What could he be possibly thinking about for next episode? I can't wait to hear what Rami's thoughts are. That's going to be coming up next. Maybe we'll have some guests. We need to have Antoine on. We haven't had him in a while. So until next time, like, subscribe, share the podcast. I appreciate everyone for listening. See ya.